Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Good morning. I'm Susan Slater, President and CEO of Habitat for Humanity of Washington, D.C. and Northern Virginia. And I'm pleased that you're here today for the D.C. kickoff of this symposium called Home is the Key to Building a Sustainable Future. Habitat DC Nova is honored to be one of 5 Habitat affiliates across the nation to hold activation events this month. At Habitat, we believe that home is far more than just 4 walls and a roof. Increased financial stability and growth begin with a stable and affordable home. And as we face rising housing costs and growing energy burdens, families are really in a pinch. Sustainable building practices are even more critical to the families we serve. Sustainability means lower utility bills, healthier living environments, and homes that are designed to last for generations. But sustainability also means strong, resilient communities and a more equitable future. That's why Habitat is committed to integrating sustainable practices into our work, from energy-efficient construction and materials to thoughtful design that reduces long-term costs for homeowners. We have spent years ensuring the homes we build not only benefit Habitat families, but also strengthen communities where we build. In 2011, we partnered with the DC government and a team of students from the New York's Parsons School of Design to build the Empower House. And you're going to see pictures of the Empower House around here, and some in the lobby. It's the first certified passive home in the district, and we were also in the International Solar Decathlon on the Mall, where we won internationally in the affordable category and also in light, which was a feat because the windows had to be energy efficient. So that was in 2011. Since then, we've continued to build sustainable, high-performance housing. In 2017, 2 of our homes in Alexandria were recognized as one of Veridian's top 10 high-performance homes. And in 2021, our own Kelly Renault worked on Denora Drive home, which received the top honor as the Earthcraft Home of the Year. Quite an honor. Today, we remain committed to building durable, energy-efficient homes that support long-term affordability for our homeowners. We're especially excited about a current project in the Deanwood neighborhood in DC, where we are building 17 passive homes, a project you will hear more about in our second panel, and I'm very excited about that panel because there are quite a few people working on that project, and it's quite a project. We hoped that today sparks new ideas, builds connections, and inspires action. Because building a sustainable future isn't something anyone can do alone. It takes collaboration, innovation, and a shared commitment to building sustainable homes and communities. Thank you for being here and for your partnership in this important work. I'm looking forward to a meaningful and engaging day together. And now it's time to introduce Nick Berger, who will be moderating the first 2 panels. Importantly, Nick is a Habitat DC Nova board member. And then in his day job, when he's not doing that, he is the Deputy Director for Energy Administration at the DC Department of Energy and the Environment. I turn it over to you, Nick.
Great, thank you so much, Susan. Welcome, everyone. Good morning. Good morning. We're so happy to have you here. We're going to get to the panel here momentarily, because I think that's going to be the most interesting part of this whole session by far. I'll just take a moment to, again, thank you all for coming, but also particularly thank the Habitat for Humanity International team for sponsoring this broader event. So this is one of a series of events that's happening all around this theme of the home is the key. So HFHI, we really appreciate your support and organization and collaboration. Big thanks to Susan, but really the broader DC NOVA Habitat for Humanity team. So Liz and Kat and others who have helped kind of pull this together and identify these amazing panelists and coordinate this awesome space. For the space, we really want to thank the AGU team. This is an amazing building. I've had the privilege to be here for events over the last few years a number of times, but it really is a cool space, and they've done some incredible work. We always talk about within the DC government, the AGU building is sort of like the forefront of how we pursue and achieve sustainability and energy savings and efficiency and green building and all the things that we're going to talk about in the panels this morning in the context of a really important sector, which is our housing sector. The district has a real commitment to improving the sustainability and the energy efficiency of all of our buildings, but in particular our housing sector. And the work that the panelists are doing at all scales, large buildings, big multifamily buildings, all the way down to single-family homes is critical to helping us achieve these goals, these very ambitious goals that we have laid out for the District of Columbia to achieve over the next 20 years or so. So we're going to get into how are we doing that? What success have we achieved? What success are we looking to build upon in the future? Last, I just want to say a big thank you to the Lowe's team. I think we have some Lowe's folks here. Lowe's is a sponsor not only of this event, but again, of this broader series of events, and so we really appreciate their support. And I know Lowe's has been a big Habitat for Humanity sponsor for years, and that's really critical because the work that Habitat does sort of lives or dies based on the support of sponsors, volunteers, everyone. So, with that, let's go ahead and bring up our first panel. Again, we have two panels today. The first one's going to talk about sort of like the state of sustainable building, kind of where we are as an industry at various scales. How do we think about sustainability? What are the big challenges? Where do we see promising technologies or approaches? And then we'll take a break and then come back for a second panel where we'll dig into some of the work that has been happening by the Habitat for Humanity folks, both in DC and Northern Virginia, that's sort of putting these ideas into practice at a very concrete way. So with that, we'll have our panelists come up. We'll do quick introductions, and then we'll launch into it. And there will be absolutely time for questions. So your job right now is to start thinking about the questions that you want to ask. What's front of mind? What's burning? What do you want to learn from these folks and the work that they're doing? So thank you again. Okay, hello again. We have an amazing panel here. We are one panelist short. Prudence Ferrer got sort of stuck on the metro. I think the metro's had a rough day. I think some folks are here despite metro's challenges. Prudence is on her way. We're going to try to pull her in if she gets here in time into the back half of this panel. If not, we'll pull her into the second panel. But I just wanted to acknowledge that she's not here yet, but we'll make sure we bring her in and get her ideas and thoughts. But what we do have is a set of three folks who are representing kind of different sectors. And I'm going to allow them to introduce themselves, and then we'll sort of launch into some questions. So, Jules, do you want to start?
Sure. Hi, good morning, everyone. My name is Jules Kunkel. I'm Vice President of Sustainable Investing at BGO. BGO has been a Habitat partner for quite a few years now. And in my role, I lead up sustainability for our U.S. portfolio. We have a global portfolio, but our U.S. portfolio is about 450 buildings, and it includes all asset classes. In addition to housing, we have office, medical office, life science, industrial, manufacturing, kind of all food groups. But it's great to be here.
Excellent. Thank you, Jules. Teresa.
Hi, everyone. My name is Teresa Ham-Modley, and I'm an associate architect with VMDO Architects here in Washington, D.C. And my focus at VMDO, or VMDO's focus on design is really around community and education design. So we work in DC and in neighboring counties and jurisdictions with community centers, K-12 schools, some higher ed, at higher ed universities and colleges around the area as well. But really driven towards education and a focus on sustainable design within those sectors.
So, thank you. And we're going to come back to this in the questions, but it's important to know that I first met Teresa my first day volunteering with DC Habitat 15 or so years ago, and she was a site supervisor. I don't know what your exact title was, but she was the boss on the site when I started. And that's really relevant. Again, we'll come back to it because I have a question about it, but that's relevant because it reflects like the way that Teresa's moved through a variety of different roles from implementation to design. And I think that's a really important point. But let's go to Oscar.
There are going to be a lot of stories about Teresa today, so just get ready. I might drop a few. Good morning. My name is Oscar Maxio. I am Executive Vice President and one of the owners at Hamel Builders. We're a 30-year-old company focused mostly in affordable workforce, attainable housing. We do a lot of multifamily in the region. We've been very fortunate to work a lot here in the district. And we have always been, we sometimes call it the bleeding edge, the cutting edge. We have just been really pragmatic about how to approach a project and very client-driven. So if our clients came to us and say, hey, I want to put a man on the moon, we would say, okay, let's figure it out. So doing passive, doing nearing net zero and those sort of projects are not quite putting a man on the moon, but having things that we've embraced and we've really gone after over the years. So we're 40,000 units in, and we keep trying to get closer and closer. And yeah, happy to be here today, so thank you.
Terrific, thanks, Oscar. Okay, we're gonna start with sort of a big picture question. And I'll just maybe ask everyone to kind of share their thoughts, and we'll just go down the line for lack of a better order. But I wanna start by just asking each of you to sort of talk briefly about your history with sustainable, or what we might call high performance buildings. In particular, we're in the area of affordable housing. And maybe in thinking about that history, if you could note any trends or changes that stuck out to you? Like where have you seen this industry go? Where have we advanced over the last 10 or 15 years, whatever's relevant? So Jules, go ahead.
Sure. So I got my start by working for the different energy efficiency programs. I worked for the DCSCU, which is contracted to DOEE, for about 5 years. And through that, I was an account manager working with a lot of different affordable housing projects across the district and offering technical assistance and also incentives and rebates to help make sure that those projects could be built more sustainably. And then from there, kind of the same parent company moved to Hawaii for 2 years to help with the Hawaii Energy program, where we launched a lot of different affordable housing rebate programs there as well. And then for the past about 5 years, I've been more on the in-house owner side, working for commercial real estate firms, where we've kind of been involved in all different kinds of asset classes. And kind of coming out of COVID, it's been a little bit slower of a time for new developments. We've had a few, but we have a lot of different standing assets, especially on the housing side.
Let's see. I would say my start in sustainability really starts with Habitat. Working at Habitat out of college, I was a superintendent in DC, and it was probably 2 years into working at Habitat that we started shifting our building practices towards more sustainable building practices. So it started with Earthcraft, and that was 2007 and 8, or something like that. And so I think I'm really lucky to have started my career so quickly launching into sustainability. I didn't know very much of how we built before. It was very quickly. We moved from standard framing practices to more high performance framing practices, introducing exterior insulation. So really grateful to Habitat and the leadership at that time that was pushing these, and a lot of support from the local USGBC groups to support Habitat in that in their goals there and their ambitious goals to move towards more sustainable housing. And so the Empower House was also probably that first pivotal project for me and for Habitat, where we learned how to build and design or build a passive house. We all learned together mostly what passive house meant, and we all, myself and Dan and Andrew, all went and got certified. So that was my introduction to passive house, and really helped launch me towards just a long-term sustainable career and interest in high-performance design and passive house. I would say that also really helped. That time at Habitat, those 7 years solidified my commitment to community design and how important affordable housing and good, clean, healthy housing is to our community and to the people that join in now the work that I do at the community center level, rec center level, K-12 level. So a strong commitment to community design and a start of my career. Yeah.
We all started when we were very, very young. So, it's funny. I think that year, that time frame, 2006, 2007, just is very pivotal because that's when Enterprise Green Communities comes out with their green communities, and they just had an event last week. FIA's U.S. Passive House Institute. I know the acronyms. I don't know the words. Also is founded here in the States in 2007. And for me, like the rest of my life, which you'll hear some stories today, I just kind of stumbled into it. My company has always, I joined Hamel in 2006, 2007, and they've always given me free range to do what I wanted. And having become a homeowner at the ripe age of 21, again, just by happenstance and luck, I just realized how having a home in utility bills overall were like the thing that could really put something affordable away from you quickly, right? I had a mental crisis breakdown when my water heater broke because my water heater breaks. At this point, my wife is becoming my ex-wife, so she's actually in Europe and took half of the money. So I'm like, okay, how am I gonna pay for this? How am I going to pay for the mortgage? I'm a laborer at a roofing company. Like, the world is collapsing on me. This is earlier than 2006, right? That's when I learned that utility bills can really, and things like that can really push you away from things. So when I joined Hamel, it really was kind of had that passion. I started poking around on things that were happening. I joined a working group with Suzanne. We had the old green working group because we were trying to figure out what this thing was, and we were the Coalition for Affordable Housing and Community Development here in the city. And just started to poke around, see what was out there. All those things were happening right at that time. But it's also kind of important to note, because there's a lot of focus on this right now, but affordable workforce housing has been in the space for a long time. It's like this morning, I'm driving my son to school. He's 12 years old. He's gotten to M&M, and M&M is like the greatest thing. So I showed him the clip of, for those that were around in 2000, I showed him the clip of Eminem at the MTV Awards, right? They're all walking in, they're all dressed the same, and he was like blown away, like, what? When did this happen? Well, that was 26 years ago, right? So, he's 12, so he can't grasp time anyways. But no, I think that's kind of when we all got into it. I think that was a pivotal year. I found myself right into it, and I found myself really for understanding that there's affordable housing, but there's also affordable living. And that's what we still need to strive for, because we're not there yet. We're just not there. We're not in affordable living. We're not in affordable operating of properties. We're not at those milestones yet. So the panic for your hot water heater breaking and not knowing how you're gonna pay for it is still very much an issue for many folks out there. So I'll shut up for a second now.
No, that's great. I think that theme of, we think a lot, as you just said, about how do we make a home affordable to acquire, whether that's purchasing a home or moving into an apartment. I think we have historically put too little emphasis on affordability to, as you say, live in, right? And that's everything from, your utilities to repairs and maintenance. And I think that is a critical piece. I know we've talked about within sort of the Habitat team about how do we bring more data to that? So I think let's come back to that theme. Maybe next, just to, again, ask each of you to reflect a little bit on a project that you're really proud of, like something you worked on that stands out, and what makes it stand out to you? What kind of makes it stick with you? You want to start again, Jules?
Sure. So this past year, I guess ever since around 4th of July last year when the OB3 was signed into law, I've been hyper focused on solar projects because I've wanted to try to get as many projects to meet the safe harbor start of construction deadline by July 4th. Essentially, if you have a project that meets that deadline, it can extend the construction period of your solar projects. So right now I have I think 80 megawatts of solar that I'm trying to get to construction. So we're up against the deadline. But actually tomorrow I'm very excited. We have a property in New Jersey. It's an industrial building where we are going to do a solar ribbon cutting, and we actually have 9.9 megawatts of solar on the roof of that building, and our solar partner believes it's the largest rooftop solar array in the state of New Jersey's history, so we're very excited. And because it's community solar, the solar array is front of the meter, so it actually doesn't contribute to our own decarbonization goals, but it does help provide excess energy to the grid when right now, especially with increases in data centers, manufacturing, all of that, there's a need more than ever for more energy on the grid. And also too, the energy that's being produced goes to local homes, and a lot of them are affordable homes, offsetting energy bills by about 25%. So it's a good story for us. I think we looked that it powers about 1,090 homes energy usage for a year. So it's exciting.
Yeah, that's awesome, and it does get to that point of ongoing affordability, right, through that community solar mechanism.
Exactly.
That's great. Teresa?
Wow, there's so many awesome projects that I've been lucky to be involved with. But I might sound cliche to go back to the Empower House again, but I think the Empower House project was one that I think was really important for me and for our DC community in that it brought together, as Susan was talking about, that project was started as a university research project that was a part of the Solar Decathlon. So it brought together, or it brought down from New York City a lot of students and faculty from a couple universities to partner with us. So first and foremost, the partnership was incredible with the university and Habitat to take those houses from the National Mall and move them onto a property in DC and make them convert the one house into two affordable passive homes in DC. So the level of community engagement on that project was just really incredible, from the university to Habitat for Humanity to the local volunteer groups and then the local the two families that worked their sweat equity to then purchase the homes and live in the homes. Just really brought so many people together around, at an early time, around these really ambitious performance goals. And I think that has reverberated throughout my career, and I think probably impacted a lot of other people's careers and in the community in DC. I know, all of this, think about all the students that left that project and went on and are now doing great work in the affordable housing sector and high performance energy, environmental sustainability sectors, and that it just continues to give back in that way. So,
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, I obviously love that project because that's both where we met, and honestly, that's where I often credit volunteering on that project with sort of part of being here today in this role, because I came in with a background in energy at that point, but I knew nothing about it, like high performance building, and through you and Dan and Andrew, that's where I kind of developed that passion. So all right,
cool.
Oscar, projects that stand out to you.
There are a couple stories about the Empower House that I lobby for Teresa to be here because I think I give her a lot of credit. Teresa, it's been a really strong muscle pulling this thing. So obviously she worked on the Empower House. The Empower House, by the way, had the Habitat was negotiating with the HCD, its partner, to get a piece of land in Ivy City and done Deanwood. And that wasn't ready, so they had to be put in a bed truck and shipped back to New Jersey to the Parsons. I think they held it for a little while. It hits a bridge on the way up. it survives, and on the way back, it kind of hits the same bridge. So just to test it, it's tough. It's tough, right? So the Empire House is another story too, which is it was built so nice and so tight that the generator went out because it was out of fuel, and people were touring the place and they were starting to get a little bit lightheaded because it was so built so tight. So we'll chat about that more about that later. But I think for me, you know, I'm a general contractor, so all my clients and all my buildings are my favorite children, right? But I do have some that stick out a little bit, and so I'm paying attention to this Empower House. We're kind of doing this whole thing at Hamel of bringing in this whole green side, if you will, and we're looking for good folks. And so we had actually done a 35 unit community in Howard County. At the time, what we could best strive for was LEED Platinum, and we did LEED Platinum Universal Design. So it's a little community, 35 units, beautiful place. At the time, it was called Nearing Net Zero because they were so efficient. And one of the moms was there for some political ribbon cutting that we did at some point. This goes back to 2000. When was this? I'm trying to get my dates out of my cheat sheets. 2011, 2012, I think we do that. And she had teenagers playing video games, and the electrical bill, including heating, was $27. So really remarkable to be able to produce that. And we didn't have solar panels. I mean, those houses didn't have solar panels back then. So that was a great project. Another great project is Weinberg Commons. So having had that experience, and then we go and steal Teresa from Habitat, bring her over to Hamel, and then now we're pursuing this project with a client, which is Weinberg Commons. Is 36 units. It was delivered in 2015. Is the first passive house certified retrofit in the country, where we did all sorts of crazy things. And Teresa was the project manager. And you know, as general contractors or project managers are not supposed to be holding tools. In fact, or superintendents are not supposed to be holding tools because of insurance reasons, right? That's a lot of risk. These are folks that, you know, so. But you get to the site and the project is complicated. Matt's working on it. We're all like trying to figure it out. We're all together trying to figure it out because a nail that is the wrong nail, a fastener that is the wrong fastener, something's the wrong thing affects the model, and then you're not getting really to the performance you need to be getting. So I'll move along the story a little bit faster to try. But you get to the job site and Teresa is there, jeans, wearing a tool belt, barking at everybody, moving it along, and she's really the muscle pulling that project forward.
It's mostly just tapes in my tool belt. Taping, air sealing.
But you were wearing a tool belt still, you know, so at any rate. That was an awesome project. There are a lot of lessons learned from that. Yeah. It's been out there for 11 years. I think the lessons learned there on some other things that we'll talk a little bit later, but just kind of to bookend that, I think now we just deliver in 2004, 108 affordable senior units at Berry Farm over the Asbury. It's also passive house. It's about 100,000 square feet. It's the first passive house, multifamily, 3 stories and up in the city. And if you collect all the openings that the building has, all the places where the building is leaking air, it basically tallies up to this. That's it. The building is that tight, that secure. So every little opening in the 100,000 gross square foot, it amounts to that. So those are projects and adventures that have been really fun. And Weinberg Commons was really fun, I think, for a lot of us here today.
Yeah, the Asbury is a cool project. I had the opportunity to come and tour it a little bit ago, and it was in a race with another building, you know, a few blocks from here for the first passive house multifamily project. And Oscar reminds me that they won,
Yes.
not by a lot, but they did win. So, but it's exciting because we're starting to see more of these kinds of buildings go up. So, Jules, let me come to you. So we talked a little bit about kind of how we got where we are, but I want to have you tell us a little bit about where you see us going in terms of affordable housing and the sort of sustainability and high performance sort of frontier. Where do you think we're headed?
Yeah, I mean, it's really interesting to see how things have evolved over time because, like a few years ago when I started my career, really, when I thought about sustainability, I was considering things like green building certifications and energy efficiency projects, which are great and obviously still a part of the conversation. But now, things are evolving much further beyond that. We are seeing a lot of different cities that now are requiring solar ready as part of building code. That wasn't the case a few years ago. I know for us and for a lot of peers, we're tracking our embodied carbon, and we're seeing a lot of different firms set embodied carbon decarbonization targets as well too, because we don't just want to think about how the building is using carbon after it's operable, or operational, but we want to think about how much carbon is actually going into the building itself too. So I think that's one way that things are evolving, and then too, especially like in my chair where we have properties all across the nation, I'm trying to keep up with policies everywhere, and federal policies can change, the pendulum can shift obviously, but I am seeing a lot of local jurisdictions such as DC, which is a leader in this space, continuing to push things forward, continuing to increase building codes, adopt building performance standards and things like that. So it's actually making us incorporate sustainability considerations right from the start, from when we're acquiring new assets or when we're developing new assets. It's no longer a nice to have, but it's a need to have. And I'm finding ways to add ESG considerations like into our pro formas. So I'm speaking the same language as like our development team or as our asset management team to help really show the value that we can get from a lot of different energy reduction projects and things like that too.
That's awesome. I mean, I guess kind of building on that, and maybe Teresa, I'll go to you, because I know you, through your VMDO, you're doing these pretty frontier projects in like kind of large scale community spaces. What do you see as some of the most promising kind of areas or opportunities, whether it's technology or design or coordination across project teams? What do you see as some of like the most promising ways that we can advance kind of what Jules is talking about in terms of, getting to that next level of performance?
Yeah, I was just thinking that in DC, we talking about harping back to these early 2000s projects that really kind of kickstarted a lot of what we're doing today in affordable housing. DC has always really been at the forefront, I think, in affordable housing, of pushing performance, and Habitat's been a major part of that. But what is really exciting is that we're starting to see that in the public sector, in our DC public projects as well. So starting with the Clean Energy Act in 2018, and then now with the Greener, I'm gonna say this wrong, the Greater Greener Buildings Act 2022, something like that, that's requiring all DC buildings to be net zero. So that covers and encompasses public libraries, rec centers, all DC public schools, any government building as well. That's really pushing, I think, at the district level, performance at a scale that we hadn't seen before. And so that's really exciting for me to see. So a lot of what we do at VMDO, we design a lot of net zero energy schools, community centers, and I think we're currently in design on our 10th or 12th of those buildings. So for me, it's exciting just to see that scale and that consistency continue to occur, where we are really driving performance as one of our key goals and design goals for the project. So a lot of that has to do with availability of solar and the solar industry in this area, our ability to use geothermal. A lot of our projects are really, the energy reduction is driven by geothermal water source heat pump systems. So we're seeing those being really viable trends that are working well for us.
Okay, so Oscar, you all are putting in a geothermal system as part of the Asbury complex. Thinking a little bit more generally as your role as a contractor. So you have a building owner that's got a bunch of ambitions. You've got a great design team that comes up with this amazing design. What are the challenges that you encounter practically when it comes to implementing these kinds of projects? Where do you see the bottlenecks or the hurdles at this point?
So I think we're starting to see less. So some years ago, even when we were doing Weinberg Commons to involve subcontractors and say, okay, this is going to be passive, we kind of got it to the point that we're like, okay, let's not put passive anywhere because we're just confusing people. People were becoming afraid of the idea, right? We had a conversation with Matt about, okay, what's passive? You know, like people start to freak out. It's something new. You know, in a sense, we're still building things very much the way we used to. It hasn't changed a whole lot. And there's conversation about that on both fronts, like should construction be different and you know, so on and so forth. But I won't take this panel in that direction right now because it's a different conversation. But we're starting to see less challenges. Companies understand. A lot of companies have bought into it. There's a company just down the street from our office in Maryland, one of our offices in Maryland, and their company was called AB something, and it was because it was asbestos. That's what they did. And we toured a building recently. We're trying to renovate, and that was done about 75 years ago. And they think they actually installed. No, my years might be wrong, but they believe they installed that asbestos at that place. But they've evolved. They have a new name now, and they have their own patent for an assembly to how to air seal things. You know how to insulate. They become a whole nother industry by themselves. And you know, this company has been around for a while. So we're starting to see less issue with that. I think where we're still running a little bit is that I think there's still a little bit of a gap between the goal, the products. I think what we're kind of struggling is this goes to another question, so I think I'm going to have to kind of pivot into the little question a little bit. It is that we were talking to a manufacturer of equipment that we're using in these high performance buildings. And I brought him to a panel to talk about challenges and what are we seeing in the industry. And he said something I hadn't paid attention to, which was at the speed at which manufacturers are changing their products. And it's faster than your iPhone. And so the challenge for us as builders is we're working together on a project. The client has great ideas. There's a great design, but this thing that we're all pegging as the solution, it's evolving. And by the time we actually get to install it, it might not be the right solution. It might become obsolete, or worse yet, we install it and then it becomes obsolete. And for those that understand or they're a participant in the affordable housing space, you get all this money to build this building, but then that building has to be able to stand and be basically maintenance-free, big maintenance-free. Like you can't be doing your roof, you can't be changing your HVAC for at least 15 years. So 15 years, this thing has to run perfectly. You have to be changing the filters, cleaning the floors, and doing your preventive maintenance, but the thing has to run for 15 years. So now if we're installing technology that, you know, they might not be able to get, because things do break, things do happen, right? So the warranty might be, you know, 5 years for a part, but the part, you know, we have manufacturers right now that are not sending us parts because they have to wait for enough of that particular thing to be ordered for them to produce that part that we need to fix something. So that's kind of the space that we're in. It's the over-reliance on technological solutions. I think that's the problem. I think the positive side of all of this is, like Teresa was talking about, she was out there with tape because people didn't know how to tape things, right? And so we're understanding the assembly much, much better. Subcontractors are understanding the assembly much, much better. And that, I think, is the positive. I think that's the bright point of all of this, because you don't replace your brick on your building. You don't replace your walls in your building. That you install, and that's there. And it'll be there until you knock it down, right? So I think what we have to solve now for the next equation is all these high-end technological things that we're relying on so much, how do we dumb it down a little bit so that a guy like me can understand them, so they can last for a while, and so on and so forth.
Okay, great. So, Teresa, I'm going to come back to you and the fact that you have been everywhere from like tool belt on to supervising the people going around and doing the taping and installing these products to now designing and sort of, at least some of the time, sitting in an office and looking at things from a big picture Given those rules, are there lessons that you take that kind of respond to some of the challenges that Oscar's laying out about how do we think about the full life cycle of design to construction and all the different people involved along the way?
Yeah, I was thinking, like what you're saying goes so hand in hand what I was saying about getting to scale, starting to do and repeating these projects over and over again. Not only do us as designers start to hone in on our strategies and be able to really optimize how we're and simplify how we are designing for energy efficiency, but the contractors are getting better at it too. They are learning how to air seal. They're understanding how to install exterior insulation, geothermal, all of these things. So I think they kind of go hand in hand, and to me, that's where we are right now. That exciting, like let's keep dialing that in together and improving that, because I think one of the things I learned about sustainability early on, it's really about quality and quality control, and kind of bringing back craft to what we do, both as designers and as builders, and having from the installer or the volunteer that's doing air sealing, having them appreciate what they're doing and why they're doing it, how it's helping to improve the building, improve our environment, and help us all achieve these goals. So I think just really trying to celebrate that craft to me has always been an important thing, and that doesn't necessarily mean going after the greatest, newest, sexiest technology. It's really finding what works well and repeating that. And then, but always looking and pushing to see what's next, what more can we do? And I think you were talking about embodied carbon and trying to understand how that can become a factor that we look at and start improving as well in our work.
So as you're going through this iterative process, and Jules, I'm going to ask you to respond here, where we're pushing, we're trying to do more, we're dealing with technology evolution and changes. Another thing that's always in the background moving is the government. The government is putting in place new laws. We're trying to update codes because we want to push, building construction or rehabilitation forward. That can cause some frustration. Where do you see, and Jules, you can start, but Oscar and Tracy, you obviously should feel free to add, but where do you see the biggest opportunities or needs for kind of government and policymakers to help both drive things forward, but also provide maybe some stability to a system that's got a lot of instability kind of built into it?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a really important question. So the area probably where I've been the most involved in kind of a lot of different policies adopting has been with the adoption of building performance standards across the country. I think that this is something that DC did very well. I'm finding other jurisdictions are maybe not doing it so well. I'm sure it's partially too because DC and then soon after New York were the first two municipalities to adopt building performance standards. But there were a lot of different kinds of interest groups. I know there's the BEPS task force that includes stakeholders from a lot of different building sectors and different groups across the city that were providing feedback representing their sector. And I think that that's critically important because building performance standards serve a very important purpose. We're not going to achieve climate goals across the country unless we have something like that in place. But in order for the real estate community, especially, to be able to participate as intended, we have to be brought into the process very early. I'm dealing right now with Washington State has its first building performance standards deadline June 1st, and we've had a lot of challenges in trying to figure out how we're going to comply with that. It's a statewide requirement, and some of our tenants don't even share data with us, so we don't even know how some of our buildings are performing. And we can't require them, even in some cases, to share their data with us. And when I've given that feedback to the CBPS office, they're kind of like, shoot, that's, I guess it is what it is. And so we've had to try to get creative. So I think really bringing in stakeholders like us from the start, so that way we can work with the policymakers is critically important.
That's great. All right, I'm going to go to Teresa and Oscar and see if they have thoughts on sort of policy changes or how the government can be an enabler. But then after that, I'm going to turn it to the audience. So tee up your questions, and we'll come around and let you pose a question to the panel. All right, but you all want to add?
I think there was a question in our list as it related to like zoning and
Yeah.
historic, and I thought maybe I could touch on that just briefly. I think that's where we in the district have some opportunity to work with, especially our historic preservation office and the CFA on projects to really push a dialogue around performance and preservation, and where they can align and where they can work well together, and where maybe performance can be valued more. One project that we just completed, the Truesdale Elementary School in Brightwood, we worked with the HPO to get the approval of solar panels on our historic roof. We were going to replace the historic roof. It takes a lot to do that. You have to reinforce the roof up to new code standards in order to allow solar to be installed. But for them, from the historic perspective, they didn't want to see those solar panels from the street. So we had to do a lot of work to show where, model it and renders of where you would see it from the street. And then we had to kind of compromise with them to take some of the solar off. But we were able to get about 75% of what we wanted on that roof. So that's contributing to the whole net zero energy equation of the site. But that felt like a huge win to get historic to let us put solar on a historic roof. So there are those challenges, and I'm currently working on a project where we are faced with the fact that historic, the Old Georgetown Board will probably make us use single pane glass. Or refurbish or replace our windows with single pane glass. So that just seems very, very crazy to me as someone that's only worked, with high performance buildings to go back to single pane glass. So how can we work with that with our performance goals? It will require a storm window and insert and some other measures, but really working with them to help preserve and advance our sustainable goals, I think is somewhere where we can continue to have that dialogue.
Yeah, in addition to the performance hit of something like a single pane glass window, which is just, you don't put that in a building these days.
Divided light too, yeah.
Divided light, all the time that you spend, right? Every conversation with the Historic Preservation Office or the Old Georgetown Board is cost, right? That's a cost for, in this case, the city. It's the cost for the affordable housing developer if it's an affordable housing building. So there's a lot of layers to that challenge.
Yeah,
right?
exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
And time. That's the one factor that's non-renewable, right? We can renew a lot of things, but time. I think what I would add is, I think that's an excellent point that you both bring. And it is really, DC in particular is kind of, for the multifamily sector, it is a little bit of the bleeding edge. As a district resident, I wasn't born here, but my kids were, so I really love this town. I applaud the fact that we're pushing or community centers or schools to be net zero. I get it, right? I'm happy that my tax dollars go to that. But when we peg that to multifamily, I think that's what we kind of have to sit around the table and figure out how to make that work. In this building, it performs great, right? You're here, you walk in this building, you don't, this works the way a passive house, net zero building is to work. As you walk in, you don't feel any need to alter anything. It's the right temperature. As more folks have walked in here, the room has maintained that because it's smart, has all the sensors, and it does all that, right? But there's one person running this building. There's one payer. When we do a multifamily building, for example, 108 units that we deliver in Berry Farm, I have 108 individual homes that each one of them behaves and works differently. So I think it's a little bit difficult to try to solve for that equation. I think that's where we do need to, what I would like is for policy, for the district, for agencies, to really, for all of us to really get around. I get invited to multiple forums to figure out things. The biggest thing right now is how do we bring the cost of construction down? And that's here in the city, it's in Virginia, it's in Maryland, it's the same conversation. And a lot of it can be done if we solve a little bit for time. Time is money, right? And when a project has to sit there for another 12 months, another 16 months, that's carrying costs. Somebody's paying, it's missed opportunities at the local level because those units are not there, bringing taxes, buying coffee at the corner shop or buying, groceries at the local, that place is just dead in the water, right? So there's no benefit to the community. So we really need to solve for a lot of, rather than, I think particularly here in DC, we push, we're pushing for net zero, but I think what I like to ask everybody is just to kind of pause, let's pay attention to lessons learned, and let's retool things. I don't think we're at a point of more regulation. I think we're at a point of we need a haircut. We need to take some things out of the way. We need to simplify certain things. Like you mentioned, Teresa, you compromise. So you have 75% of what should have been 100%. That's the 25% loss of energy production is in perpetuity. Right? That's lost opportunity for. If we're trying to solve for the problem, let's really all solve for the problem. I don't need to be, I think it's a change in the mindset. I don't need to be your enemy. We're trying to solve for affordable housing. Affordable housing is a crisis nationwide, right? We keep saying that, but we're not all embracing it. So I can't put the construction hat on and just put a bunch of holes into a project so the project doesn't go. I need to build, I need to embrace the requirements, I need to solve for the requirement, and that, Teresa does the same thing, Jill does the same thing. You're all solving for the issue. How am I going to solve for this? So that's, I think, where, you're certainly here, but there are other, across the nation, not just in DC, where folks are not seeing that from that perspective. They're like, oh, I got to guard this. I got to install single pane glass. And that's my neighbor, right? In Mount Pleasant. So I think we're getting recorded here, so this is going to get anticipated. But I think that's the area that we really need to all embrace. And it's not just, agencies and political. We all need to embrace how do we solve for this. So start every conversation with yes and that really is the mind shift that we have to get to. Otherwise, we're going to continue to leave 25% on the table. We're going to continue to, miss opportunities that are harder and harder to come by.
Yeah, that's a terrific point. All right. Who in the audience has a question? We've got one over here. So we'll go here first, and then maybe over to this corner over here, and then back here. Okay.
Okay, hello. My name is April Pradier. I am a native Washingtonian, and I'm also a developer and owner in multifamily. My question, which you guys really didn't address, so I have a model very specific to affordable living, right? Not just affordable housing, that's just a component of it. But I'm taking it also a step further past utilities and efficiencies. I'm looking at food, I'm looking at transportation, and just other things. Because I remember being young and wanting to go to Miami, right? So I want people to be able to live and be under market rent so that they can, do things, right? So with all these new technologies and, sustainability and all these efforts that you guys have been talking about, how are you guys looking at cost? Because as a owner, the cost of materials have gone up exponentially, and just even over the last 5 years, hell, this year, right? With everything that's going on overseas. So that's one component. And then the second part of my question, which is much, much shorter, what are you guys even calling affordable, right? I have my own definition, which is below market rents. I have to buy right from the front in order to give back to the residents. But I think, being a native Washingtonian, what they did with the conversion of the office space, and then they're saying, oh, it's affordable, but it's $3,500. Who is it affordable to, right? I mean, the majority of the Washingtonians that live here, they don't make the salaries that can afford them to be able to live in a one-bedroom that's $3,500. So I just wanted to get an idea from you, and especially you, Oscar, because you also do affordable living. So I think you understand what I'm really saying here, and how does that, as a developer, convey, because the cost of materials are so high?
That's a terrific question. Who wants to start? Oscar?
Oh, mic's off. No, is it? Yeah, there we go. So in terms of, I'm not a developer, I'm just a builder, but in terms of the definition of affordable, when you work with the Department of Housing and Community Development, you're serving different income spectrums, and then the rents for those units, it's only so much. Like if you have units, if you're 30% AMI, area median income, your rent can only be 1/3 of your income. So the office conversion, the rent might be 3,500, but if they have units at 30%, that person or family will only pay that amount. So that's kind of the way it works on those projects. They're publicly funded. So there's 60%, there's 80% area median income. DC and the whole region, the incomes are, like if Jeff Bezos walked in here right now, we would all be billionaires, right? On the average, right? As an area median, because he brings it up so high, we would all be billionaires, but we're not. So that's kind of the way it works for affordable housing. That's the answer to what is defined as affordable housing in the region. In terms of material costs, so that's the area that we're all subject to the same thing. What we have to do there is just be smart as to what we use. There's choices as to what you use. That's where sometimes the struggle becomes, because I'm like, well, we can buy this material, looks not quite like the architectural thought that you had or envisioned, but we kind of have to compromise. And when you work with folks like Teresa or Matt, you really get to that compromise. I've worked with great architects that are like, no, my design intent is this, and hell or high water. But no, I think that's the only way you can do it, because at that point, that's not a DC problem, that's a global problem. That's just nothing. That's something we can solve here. The things that we can solve for here are how do we embrace development, right? How do we facilitate? How do we roll the carpet for a project to go from 0 to 60 and under a second, right? If we get the hurdles out of the way, that actually does lower the cost of bringing that unit to market. You can't change the cost of wood single-handedly in the city. You can't change the cost of a window, but you can certainly change the time that it takes you to develop and build and deliver a unit, and that is real money. That is a lot of money, in fact, that's left on the table way too often.
That's great. It sounds like you want to add, which is great. I was hoping maybe if you have the information, you can say something about sort of any data you've seen on that kind of livability, affordability, and maybe as we're doing that, we can kind of head this direction to the question in the back.
Sure. So this is, so recently I was at one of our properties, actually in the Phoenix area, so not in the DC area, but we're seeing our residents there truly struggle to make ends meet, given the increasing costs for water bills there especially, and electricity, because of cooling capacity is very high there. We're seeing residents month by month have to choose to pay their utilities or pay rent. And so what our on-site property team has been doing is we've been engaging our residents to try to figure out how we can work with them on whether it's budgeting solutions, nearby workforce solutions, and then like even local incentives or access to free public transportation to help lower some of those costs. It's a challenging problem, or it's challenging to solve all of these problems for sure, but I think engaging the actual people who live in the building and listening to them is important, so that way we can solve those problems.
Terrific. Okay. Next question.
Hi, my name is Lydia Bubniak, and I'm a student of public policy. I'm curious to hear if you have any thoughts on creating purpose-specific buildings that are designed in the first place to be more flexible for adaptive reuse. Out in suburban Loudoun County, they have lots of shopping malls, Walmarts, that sort of thing that were built for one specific purpose, and you really can't. The way it is, or office parks, for example, quite expensive to convert to housing, because adding plumbing later is a lot more expensive than just putting it in up front. Giant windowless data centers that really don't have any other potential for use. So I'm really curious to hear if you have any thoughts on how buildings could be designed in the first place so that they could be used in a different way in the future when certain things fall out of fashion. because we all know that, the efficient the most green buildings are probably, for the most part, the ones that exist already. So that would be great to hear. Thank you.
Great. Teresa, I know you maybe don't exactly design these buildings, but I wonder if you have insights from your work designing very specific purpose buildings like rec centers and schools. Kind of how do we think about this?
Yeah, I mean, I was thinking a lot that as designers, when we talk about resilience, a lot of that has to do with adaptability and flexibility for future use. I think you cited a lot of good challenges for existing buildings in terms of conversions, but I think there are a lot of opportunities in our existing building stock for conversions and for reuse and all sorts of types. So I think that we can be really creative in that. There are going to be cost challenges, as you have also mentioned, just in terms of changing systems and utilities, but it is possible. So looking at our existing building stock first and foremost before we start designing more or new buildings is going to be really important in our future, in the next 10 or 15 years, because as you're saying, most of the buildings that we need to tackle, most of the buildings in 10, 15 years are already built today, and we need to tackle their performance and their performance. But looking at we're always looking at trying to be as flexible in our spaces as we can, design less, allow for more adaptability, whether it's furniture or flexible partitions, but really actually trying to design less so that there's more opportunity for adaptability down the road in a lot of ways.
Terrific. I'm going to move to the next but also final question because we are at our time for this session. But I think over here is the next question.
Hi, my name is Lati Schlegel. All of my work right now is at the intersection of housing affordability and climate change. So love this panel, appreciate your insights. It strikes me that what everybody is talking about is like, what is the lowest cost, most efficient, resilient building we can build, or home we can build in this place, right, in this area. And I'm curious what you think it will take for us to cut the time of construction, right, to actually like manage to the outcome, that outcome. And what you think we could do as a community to get there.
Well, I think so. The first thing what we can do to get there sooner is at the policy level, understand the approval process, understand. Well, let me start from the end. At the community level, what we can all do is be more supportive of projects down the street. I get the pleasure to go with my clients to community meetings, and as charming as I can be, sometimes people don't like us. And I get it, because we're going somewhere and we're telling somebody that we're going to put this building here, or we're going to renovate this building, we're going to adapt this building to something else, and it's going to be right next to their home, which their home is their biggest asset in terms of retirement. So you're trying to solve for a very tough equation. And I think that's where a lot of power is being given to the community in a lot of places. I don't know what the answer to that is, but I think that's an area that we can try to find a way to wrestle some of that back and make decisions that folks understand. Because I've seen, you can argue with somebody that it's best for you that this lot becomes 100 units, 20 units, 1,000 units, whatever, fill in the gap. It's best for you to have something here. They have nothing. They have nothing, because you might want a park, but who's going to pay for the maintenance of the park? You might want a rec center, but who's going to go to the rec center? It's hard for people to get out of their mind to realize that we're finite. The community isn't. We're trying to have a community that goes on, that lives on, without us, right? So I think that's kind of where the area that we can help as a community is be more supportive. If you see a project, just because you don't have anything against it, go and have something in favor. Really push, really solve for that. At the same level, at our government level, that's where there are ways that we can expedite the process. These are design professionals, licensed, insured through the wazoo. The reviews shouldn't be so hard. You know, particularly I got I was doing a project in Georgetown. So my project was sitting right behind the folks trying to get the Apple Store approved on, what is that, Wisconsin Avenue. God, that was a battle of egos for the centuries between the, no offense to you guys, I love you both, between the architects at this Commission of Fine Arts and the architects that Apple was flying in from San Francisco, I think they were. And meanwhile, the place is not open, economic movement doesn't happen. But it was a battle of egos, and I blame them both. I blame them both. I was there with my little restaurant trying to get this thing fixed, and like, it was just remarkable. But that's the other area where really let the professionals take responsibility for that. At a community level, I see a lot of times questions like, "Oh, I want the building to be lighter." I don't know what that means. I want the building to be less massive. I don't know what that means. Like we're really pursuing things like that. All those are so abstract, so unsolvable. You know, I don't need to go and point to Nick and say, "Hey, Nick, you need to make your house something." That's not my problem. He's gonna live there. He's gotta maintain it. That's his problem. And you know what? He's the one putting the money behind it. So God bless you. You know, if you want that, giddy up. That's where we should really go. I think those are the areas we can really make an impact. And it's mindset, and it's action, and it's action mode today.
All right. Any quick, I don't want to cut folks off, but any quick last thoughts on this one of what we can do?
Or I'll just give a quick plug for Mass Timber, because I know for all new construction projects, we are constantly hearing that projects need to be on budget and on time. And we've found, not at my current firm, but where I was previously, by working with a JV partner, by pursuing a Mass Timber project, it cut down the construction time immensely. So that was a really great result of seeing that low embodied carbon technology. Oh, sure, sorry. So Mass Timber, essentially what it does is it replaces a lot of concrete and steel that's used in the construction of a property by instead pursuing actual timber itself. It's actually the 80 M Street has Mass Timber renovation on the top 2 floors. I think there's also, I'm trying to think of other examples in DC, maybe the library in Southwest.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, Lever Run in Arlington as well.
Right.
It's mass timber
Yep.
structure.
Yep.
Lots
It's very cool.
Yeah.
It's a little oversimplification. You think of it as really big plywood.
Yeah.
All right, we're going to close out the panel. I will say, Lottie, to your question, I'll just put a plug in for my colleagues at the Office of Planning. The district is currently redoing its comprehensive plan, and they are looking for comments. And although it's abstract and it's high level, it really sets the stage for where do we start? If we're going to take a parcel of land in the district, are we starting from a 5-story building, a 7-story building, a 1-story single-family home? They're looking for your input. And so to the extent that you want to set that bar, that starting point in a particular place, tell them. Go on to the DC Office of Planning website and provide comments on that comprehensive plan.
And with that, the RFK development would be a really good place to provide your input around all of the housing requirements for that project.
Yes,
That's
terrific.
now in planning. Yep.
Great point. Okay. I'd like to thank the panelists, Oscar, Teresa, Jules. We really appreciate your time today. This was great. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.